In this part, we're going to work on the login and the sign up UI. Now we need to create the login and the registered pages in the auth group. Let's create a functional component and rename this to capital login. Let's do the same for the register page. A functional component and rename this to capital register. So now we need to be able to move to these pages from the welcome page, and we need to define a router for that. So let's create a router using the use router hook. And when we click on this sign in button, we're gonna push a new route as auth/login. This is the one. And let's do the same for a register page on get started button. Let's copy this and paste this here. And we're gonna change the route as auth group/register like this. Let's save this. And now if I click on the sign in button, let's just reload the application and click on sign in. So there we can see we are on the login page. Now let's move to the login page, and here we need to import our screen wrapper component. And let's save this. So we can't see the login text, so let's use our typo component. There we can see. So now I'm just gonna copy and paste the entire style sheet for this component so that I don't have to type every style, and I'll just show you these styles whenever I use them, and this will save a lot of time. Now let's import all of these variables: spacing y, x, vertical scale, and the colors. Okay, all the errors are gone. Now let's create a container view and give this a style of container. And you can see the container has the following styles: flex, gap, and padding horizontal like this. Now here I'm gonna create a back button, and we need to create a custom back button so that we can use it in future. So let's just create a new component, back button. Let's create a functional component, and let me just go back and import this inside this container. Back button. Let's save this, and now let's work on our back button component. So this will receive some properties as the style and the icon size. So the icon will be the icon that we're gonna use for the back button, and the default size will be 26 for that icon. The type for this component will be back button props from our types, and this has the style and the icon size type. So now let's change this to a touchable opacity, and let's add an onPress method, and we're gonna use the router to go back to previous page. So let's define the router, use router hook, and when we click on this button, we're gonna use the back function to go back to previous screen. Now let's add the style. We're gonna add the styles dot button from these are the default button styles, but we're also gonna pass the style that we're passing from the parent component in case if we need to override any styles. Now this here will not be the text. We're gonna use a back icon. So we're gonna use Phosphor React Native icons. We have already installed them, but if you haven't, you can just install them. And this is their website. So if you click on explore icons, there we can explore all the icons. So we're gonna use a caret left icon for the back icon. This is the icon, and if you click on it, you can see we have multiple variants of this icon: fill, light, regular, and bold icon. We're gonna use the bold icon for this back icon. So let's just remove this, and here let's just import caret left icon from Phosphor React Native, and this has some properties as size. Let's use the vertical scale, then use the icon size that we're passing to this component. Then it has a color property, so color will be colors.white. We need to import the colors like this. And then it has a weight property where we can define the variant, if it's bold, fill, or regular. So these are all the color icon variants. So if I just remove this, there it will suggest all the variants of this icon. We're gonna use the bold icon. Let's close this and save this. um, we should be able to see this icon. Maybe it's some cache issue, so let's just reload the application. Okay, there we can see the icon, and if we click on it, we move back to previous screen. So it's working as expected. Now let's add a style for it, and let's add a background color of neutral 600 from our colors. Then this should always be on the left side, so align self to flex start. And let's add a border radius of 12 from our theme. Border curve as continuous, and then the padding of 5 pixels. Let's save this, and maybe we need to reload the application again. Sometimes Expo does that. We have to reload the application to see the changes. Not sure why. So let's go to sign in. So there we can see the updated design. Now we are able to change the icon size from the parent component. So if I want to update the icon size to 28, there we can see the icon is bigger now. Now let's create a view and give this a style of gap of 5 pixels, then margin top of spacing Y of 20 pixels. Now this should display here because I want to add some text on top of the form. So let's use typo, and this will say hey. There we can see. Now let's increase the size to 30, and the font weight will be 800. Okay, now let's just duplicate this, and this line will say welcome back. So it will become hey welcome back, like this. Now after this, we're gonna add the login form. So let's create a view and give this a style of form. And for the form styles, we have just a gap between the inputs that we're gonna define. So let's add a typo here and give this a size of 16, and the text color will be the text lighter color from our colors, and this will say login now to track all your expenses. Let's save this, and there we can see the text. Now I want to add an input here, but I want to add a custom input component for this so that we can reuse this in future. So let's create a new component input. Let's create a functional component, and let's just import it here like this. So now let's go into the input component, and this will receive some props, and the type will be input props from our types file. And if I go into that type, you will see we have icon, container style, input style, and the input reference. You can just copy the types for all of these properties. Now let's add the style for the container. We're gonna have some default container styles. So let's add styles.container, and then the container styles from the parent component in case if you want to override any styles. Now let me just define this container here like this, and let's just remove this, and we're gonna use a text input component here. And let's add the style for this. We're gonna have some default input styles, so styles.input, and then the input styles from the parent component, so props.input styles like this. And let's just define it here, input style. Okay, so let's add a property placeholder text color. This will be neutral 400 from our colors. And then we're gonna assign the reference if we are passing it from the parent component, so props.input reference like this. Let's save this, and now let's add the styles for the container. So let's add flex direction as row. And the reason for that, we can add an icon to the input as well. So I forgot to do that. So here, this will have props.icon. If we are passing any icon component from the parent component, then we gonna have a height of vertical scale 64. Then align items into center and justify content center. Border width of 1. Border color of neutral 300. Then let's add the border radius of 17 from the radiuses, and border curve as continuous. Okay, so let's save this, and there we can see the input already. Okay, so we're gonna add some padding horizontal and the gap between the icon. So padding horizontal will be spacing X of 15, and then we will have a gap of spacing X10 like this. Now let's add the style for the input. So let's add flex 1 and the color of white. So the font color will be white, and the font size will be dynamic vertical scale of 14. Let's save this. Okay, so this is working, and with this the input component is complete. Did we add the icon? Yes. So now let's use this input to the login component, and let's add a placeholder here. This will say enter your email. Let's save this. We should be able to see this placeholder here. Let's go into the input component. Okay. So we need to spread all the props that we're passing to this component. So when I save this, you can see we have the placeholder now. So let's add an icon to this input, and for that we're gonna use the phosphor icon. So let me just import all the icons at once, and then we will use the email icon. And the icon we are gonna use is the @ symbol. So icons.@, and let's give it a size of vertical scale of 26, and let's save this. We need to close this icon tag. What's the issue here? Okay, so let's save this. So there we can see the @ symbol, but we need to change the color. So let's add the color of neutral 300 from our colors, and let's also use the weight property as fill. Let's save this. So there we can see the @ symbol. Now when user types a value, we need to store it somewhere, and we're gonna use the email reference for that. We can even use the use state hook, but that will re-render the whole component whenever user types a value. So when possible, I try to use the references. So we have the email reference and the password reference, and let's add a function on this input on change text. This will give us the updated value whenever user types something, and we will just update the current value on the email reference like this. So let's just copy this for the password input as well. Let's change this to enter your password, and let's save this. So there we can see we have two inputs, and let's change the symbol to log. Let's save this. We have the new icon. This will update the password reference dot current value. And we also want to add secure text entry property. So whenever we type in anything into email, we can see it. But if we type any password, we shouldn't be able to see this. Now let's create another view for the footer area at the bottom. So let's create a view and give this a style of footer. And for the footer style, we have the following styles. You can just copy them from here. Before we work on the footer, we need to add the submit button and the forget password link. So let's add the typo and give it a size of 14, and the color will be text color from our colors, and style will be align self to flex end so that it shows on the right corner. And this will just say a forgot password. I'm not gonna make this functional. I just added this because it looks good in the UI. So that's why I just added it. Now let's add the button component, and we will have an on press method that will trigger handle submit function. And let's create this function here, handle submit. This will be an async function. Let's just leave it like that for now. And inside this, we're gonna have a typo component. This will say login. So let's add a font weight of 700. The color will be black, and the size of the text will be 21. And this will just say login. Let's save this. So there we can see the login button. Now let's add a loading property on this button as well. So when we are loading the user, this will go into the loading state. So let's add this state is loading, and set is loading. By default, this will be false, and this should be const. This will be true when we are logging in the user, and this will show the loading here. But we can see it now if I just change this to true. There we can see the loading, and by default this will be false. So let's change it back. Okay, now we need to add a text at the bottom in the footer. So let's go into the footer, and here let's add a typo, and this will say don't have an account, then sign up. So let's give this a size of 15. And after that, we're gonna have a sign up button. So let's use a pressable, and inside this, let's add a typo and give this a size of 15. And then it will say sign up. So it will be like don't have an account, then just simply sign up like this. Now for the footer, we have the following styles. So these are shown in a row. So let's add an on press function on this pressable, and this will just move to the sign up page. So let's define the router so that we can move to sign up page. And when we click on this, this will just navigate a new route auth/register like this. And let's change this button to make it look like a button. So font weight will be 700. And then let's add a primary color for this text. Let's save this. So now it looks good. Okay, so now when we click on this, this moves to register. So it's working. So the sign-in screen is almost complete. We just need to add the validation for the email and the password. So when we click on this button, this will trigger handed submit, and we have the email reference and the password reference. So we're just gonna check if we have any value in both of them. We're gonna make a condition. If we don't have value in either of these variables, then we're gonna alert the user. This will say login, and the message will say please fill all the fields, and we'll just simply return from here. But if we have the value in both of them, then we will just print the email value and the password value, and then it will say good to go. Let's save this, and let's see if this is working. So if I click on this, we have fill all the fields warning, and if I type anything in email and then hit login, we still have to enter the password. So let's enter the password and click on login. So there we can see good to go, and we have the email value and the password value. Okay, so with this, our login screen is complete, and the sign up screen will be very similar. So we're just gonna copy the login screen to the sign up and change some variables. So let's just copy this and paste it into the register page. Let's change the component name to register here. And when we are exporting this screen like this, now as you can see, we have the same login screen. Now let's change some things around. So let's change this text to let's get started. Okay. Now we need to change this text. So this will say create an account to track all your expenses. Let's save this. Okay, so now we need to add a new input for the username as well. So let's create a new reference. This will be name reference. And let's also add this to the validation condition. So user must add the email, password, and the name. Then this will say sign up. Let's also console log the name here. Okay. Now let's copy the email input for this name input. And this will be shown on the top. This will say enter your name. We will change the name reference, and we will have a user icon from the Phosphor React Native icons. Let's save this, and there we have the name input. So let's change. We don't need this forgot password, so let's just remove this, and we need to change this to sign up, and we need to change the footer as well. So this will say already have an account, then login. So this will say login, and we need to change the route to auth/login. Let's remove this, and this is the route. So let's save this. Okay, so I think it's looking pretty good. Now let's just reload the application. So let's go to the sign up. Sorry, we need to go to sign up. And let's see if the validation is working on the sign up. So if I click on this, we see the warning. And let's add the name, the email, and hit sign up. We need to add the password as well. So let's add the password and hit sign up. There we can see, good to go. And we have the email, name, and the password. So everything is working. If I click on login, it's moving to a new page because we're using the push function and it's creating a new route every time. But if we change this to navigate, it will use the previous route in the history and it will move back to that page. So just change this to navigate. Let's just reload. So let's go to sign up and then login. Now, if I click on sign up, this will immediately take me back to the previous route in the history, and this is working great. Now with this, our login and the sign up UI is complete. And in the next part, we will work on Firebase authentication.